Welcome back to another transfer tips video ahead of Gameweek 19. We're going to be talking about the players we should buy, hold and sell, and also possibly avoid. Tsimikas will be discussed at the beginning of this video, and we'll talk about whether it's worth buying him. So let's get straight into the video. So at only 3.7 million, a lot of people are flocking towards Tsimikas, and I can understand that, but I'm still of the opinion that the treble of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Diogo Jota and Mohamed Salah is the best way to go. And despite the fact that Tsimikas can do very well over the next 2 game weeks, I just don't think it's worth a purchase. The reason for this is that Robertson's suspension actually ends by the Chelsea game, which is the 2nd of January. So Tsimikas will get 2 games against Leeds and Leicester, but they're not the greatest fixtures on paper regardless, and I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool failed to keep a clean sheet in both of those. They were very shaky against Tottenham, and yes, they were missing Fabinho and Van Dijk and a few others, but I still think that it's not really worth buying Tsimikas, who is 3.7 million, and for the next 2 game weeks he could offer possibly the best value in the game amongst defenders, but I don't think it's worth a purchase when Robertson's going to come back and take his place ahead of the Chelsea game potentially, and it just doesn't really make sense. And also Jota, around 7 million, playing consistently up front, offers insane value, but with Tsimikas it's just a short-term punt. So honestly, for me, it's an avoid with Tsimikas. If you have him, then obviously hold him and, play him in these next 2 games. But otherwise, I would literally just not look to buy him. I don't think it's worth it. His stats are pretty good. He's only played 7 games and he's got 1 assist, 3 shots inside the box, 3 shots overall, 1 on target. And his XG and XA figures are pretty decent for a defender, considering the fact he's only played 7 games. He's also created 1 big chance and had 11 key passes completed, so some decent stats across the board. And Tsimikas is always going to be a decent short-term purchase, but he's nothing more than that. And right now, with everything that's happening and you want to build as much squad depth as possible, I think it makes more sense to buy players for the long term and not just focus on 1 or 2 game weeks. So Tsimikas for me is an avoid, really. Now we're looking at the people we should buy, and Martinelli is right at the top of the list. Now I'm going to concede this, that if you look at the fixtures, they're actually not great. So other than the Norwich fixture, Wolves is very difficult. They've been very solid recently. Then Man City and Tottenham, those are some tough games. Burnley after is pretty decent, but when you're looking at Martinelli, he's only 5.3 million and he's looking so good recently, and he's also got the stats to back them up. If you look across the season, 11 appearances, a lot of them off the bench, 4 goals and 3 assists, and he's been very consistent in the last 5 game weeks, and I think he can continue that at least for the foreseeable future. And 15 shots inside the box. His XG and XA is pretty decent considering the limited minutes he's had, and 6 big chances. So Martinelli is getting in some very good positions, and I have to say, from all the Arsenal players, in my opinion, he makes the best runs and he has the best attack positioning. And under Emery, he was looking so promising. I think at one point he scored 10 goals in only 12 starts in all competitions, and he's now finally recapturing that form. And we didn't see the best of Martinelli under Arteta until now. And also 16 key passes, so he actually creates a lot of chances himself. 2 big chances created, and against Leeds he became the first player since Alexis Sanchez against West Ham to score 2 goals and also create a number of chances. I think he created 5 chances in the game against Leeds, and yeah, it was a depleted Leeds side who were down to the bare bones, but Martinelli looks so impressive. And I think if you have a bench fodder option like Douglas Luiz or even Ramsey, you could actually make a case for upgrading them to Martinelli and bolstering your squad. And I think against Norwich, Martinelli is a fantastic option. So despite my reluctance to maybe even play Martinelli against Wolves, Man City and Tottenham, I think Martinelli is a buy. Another forward and winger from North London is Heung-min Son. I think he's definitely a buy right now. And when you look at players like Bernardo Silva and Foden, who are possibly going to be in and out of the team, especially in the case of Foden with his disciplinary issues, then you look at Bernardo Silva, who possibly might be playing deeper. I think a move from one of them to Heung-min Son makes complete sense, and some good fixtures up until Game Week 28. But if you look at over the next 5, the fixtures aren't that great. You look at Crystal Palace at home, it's not the best fixture, but at the same time I think it's pretty decent for Son. But then you see Arsenal and Chelsea in 4 and 5 game weeks time. That is not ideal, but Son is fixture proof, and he was so threatening against Liverpool and probably should have got more points. His stats across the season are pretty good. They're actually better than last season around the same stage, but last season Son and Kane were on another level, and now they're starting to recapture the form slightly. Kane had a lot of chances against Liverpool, but I do prefer Heung-min Son, and he's looking very good at the moment. 14 appearances, 7 goals and 3 assists, some pretty decent returns, and when you're looking at midfielders, there's not many that are more consistent than Heung-min Son. Other than Salah, I think Son is the most consistent. 33 shots, 14 on target, and 19 shots in the box with some healthy XG and XA figures, and 10 big chances. That's the big stat that stands out, and 25 key passes. Only 1 big chance created, but he still has that creativity. And if Kane can get his shooting boots on, Son is only going to get even more assists. So for me, you look at Sterling, Bruno Fernandes, Mane, they're all good in their own right, but right now I think Son is the best midfielder who's kind of bordering that premium price tag. So if you want a kind of second or third, technically premium player, I think Son is the one to go for. Now, this is a bit of a weird one. We've got Roman Saiss, and the same goes for most Wolves defenders. You could look at Aït-Nouri when he comes back from injury, Kilman, and a few others like Cody. But Saiss has the most attacking threat, and he's looking very good recently, very consistent returns, and Wolves are looking solid. Even against Liverpool and City, they were very unfortunate not to come away from those games with a clean sheet and possibly some points on the board, and I'm very impressed by them. Around game week 15, 16, maybe even slightly before that, when their kind of difficult fixture run started around game week 14, I was highlighting Wolves players as sells, but they've still actually done pretty well, especially the defenders. So if you kept them through that period, that's a very good decision in hindsight, and they're now very good assets going into the future. My only concern would be that Wolves might change their approach slightly, so they're going to be a bit more open, focus more on attacking against the weaker sides, as opposed to how they performed against the kind of better teams, where they just sat back a bit more and were conservative and very solid at the back. But Roman Saiss has that attacking threat. 2 XG is very impressive for a centre-back, and in aerial situations and set pieces, Roman Saiss is an absolute monster, and also 8 shots inside the box. So if you look across the board, some pretty decent stats. 4 big chances for a centre-back, even though it is in 18 games, is still fairly impressive, and the fixtures are pretty good. Arsenal and United are not the best, and I don't really expect a clean sheet in those games, but in the others, I wouldn't be too surprised if Roman Saiss did very well, got some bonus points too. So I think Wolves defenders are now a buy once again, same with Raul Jimenez up front. I'm not too sure about their midfielders, but as for their defenders and Raul Jimenez, I think they're all worth purchasing. And if you're looking for someone around 4.5 to 5.5 million in defence, I think Roman Saiss is probably up there. This may seem a bit odd. I know a lot of people are looking to sell Bernardo Silva, and I think if this continues, this trend of Bernardo Silva playing deeper, then I do agree he is a sell. But I think for now, he is a hold, and he was still getting into some good positions against Newcastle, and if Gabriel Jesus had converted the chance created by Bernardo Silva, we'd probably be looking at this situation a little bit differently. So Bernardo Silva owners have been fairly unlucky recently, and his stats across the board are still decent across the season. 7 goals and 3 assists in 17 games, so very similar stats to Heung-min Son, who to be fair has played fewer games. 24 shots, 15 on target, 23 shots inside the box, and Bernardo Silva is always up there in terms of actual touches in the box, which is a very important stat for midfielders and attackers, especially in FPL. And then you look at 8 big chances and 5 big chances created. It hasn't improved too much since the last time I talked about Bernardo Silva around game weeks 14 to 16, but still some very good stats across the board. 27 key passes, and City have a great fixture run and they're fixture proof regardless. The problem with them is that different players can score, different players can play on the left, on the right, and as that false 9, and sometimes someone like Bernardo Silva, who looks very good for maybe 3 to 4 game weeks, he might now suddenly look kind of useless a few weeks down the line. But I promise you, he's not useless. I still think he's a good asset. Do I prefer Diego Jota? Yes. Do I prefer a few other midfielders like Heung-min Son? Of course. But Bernardo Silva is still one of the better options, around 7.5 million, and I think he is still worth holding. If I didn't have him, I wouldn't be looking to buy him, but I don't think he's necessarily a priority sell. He's actually done very well in previous games against some of the opposition coming up, like Leicester, where he scored the winner. So I think he's a hold for now. But if this situation continues, he doesn't get the points, and he's still playing deeper, then that's where I'd say, you know what, a move to Heung-min Son, Diego Jota, and a few others like maybe even Mason Mount or Foden makes sense, and I'd go ahead with it. Another player I talked about selling around game week 16 was Rafinha, and kind of similar to the Wolves players, they ended up doing very well regardless. The thing with Rafinha is that a lot of the points he's got recently are from penalties, and maybe a bit fortunate to get them, but at the same time, penalties are a huge part of a player's appeal, and Rafinha has them right now until Bamford and Click are pretty much nailed into that side again. But yeah, for me, Rafinha is looking very good regardless. Around this price, he's always been one of the better options, and he's up there in terms of points scored amongst midfielders. The stats are good across the board, and one thing that has definitely improved from last season with Rafinha is the amount of shots he takes and his XG. All of those figures are very impressive, so he is overperforming his XG quite considerably, but still, over 5xg and over 3xa, and that's where you might say, well, in terms of expected goal involvements, it balances out because he's not really getting the assists he deserves, and he still has those key passes and the big chances created, kind of similar to last season, even though you might argue that the creativity has slightly dipped. But then again, he has no focal point like Bamford to rely on, and Leeds are looking awful this season. But some very good stats across the board. Leeds could be in a relegation fight, but some good fixtures coming up for Leeds, and that's where I think that Rafinha's performances will actually improve and he'll get even more chances. But 5 big chances across the season isn't great, to be fair. 4 big chances created. He had 3 shots inside the box against Arsenal and some good stats across the board. Not that many shots inside the box across the whole season, but 48 shots overall is very impressive. And the thing with Rafinha is he's just a great player overall, and I think if Leeds have any chance of surviving, they need Rafinha to be at the top of his game, which he is right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he does well against Liverpool, especially if they still have some absentees because of COVID and injuries. And I think Rafinha is just a hold, especially if he can maintain those penalties. I think he's looking really good, and probably looking around game week 20, if you don't have him already, I think Rafinha is actually worth buying. Then you have Conor Gallagher, you've got Smith Rowe, Martinelli, and a few others like Jarrod Bowen, but Rafinha is still right at the top of the best midfielders, and he's only, between 6 and 7 million, so I think he's still a very good purchase, and if you do have him, definitely hold him, even through this Liverpool fixture. Sergio Reguilon is also a hold, and if we actually look at the comparison between him and Marcos Alonso, Reguilon was performing better until Reguilon had that injury, and then he just came back and made a cameo appearance against Liverpool. And I just want to stress to those who do have Reguilon, I probably would look to hold. There's some good fixtures in there. Spurs are looking much better defensively. They haven't lost a game yet under Antonio Conte in the Premier League at least, and Reguilon has some good attacking stats. He should reclaim that spot from Ryan Sessegnon despite, pretty decent performance up against Mohamed Salah. But Reguilon is first choice, and I think Spurs are a better team with Reguilon in it. And I just look across the board, some decent stats, 2 big chances created, and 7 shots overall, 5 inside the box, only 14 appearances, but to be fair, they're maybe not groundbreaking stats. He's not going to be a Trent, even an Alonso, a James, or a Cancelo, but Reguilon might be the best of the rest. You're looking at defenders around 4.5 to 5.5 million. A lot of people are in the market for these sorts of defenders, and other than Saiss, Soufal, Tierney, and a few others, I think Reguilon is definitely, maybe arguably, the pick of the bunch, and I think Reguilon is a good option. I'm looking at how good Spurs are defensively. I think that's what seals it for me, and if they keep a clean sheet, maybe they win by the odd goal or even draw, Reguilon has a very good chance of getting bonus points, so I would go for Reguilon, at least hold him if you have him. If I didn't actually have Reguilon, that's where it's a bit different. You don't have to buy him because you have so many other options elsewhere, but he's still arguably a buy in some cases. But for me, the main thing is if you do have Reguilon, I'd keep him, and I don't think really it's worth a move maybe to a Tierney, especially if you have Ramsdale. Good old Jamie Vardy, and he started the season so well. I was happy to have his points against Watford finally, but since then it's been very disappointing. He's been benched in 2 games, one of the games got cancelled, and for his price, I just don't think he's worth it. And you're looking at Cristiano Ronaldo, even Harry Kane potentially could be back. Who knows, maybe it's too early to say, and I think it is. But Jamie Vardy right now isn't the best premium or kind of borderline premium striker, as he was for probably the first half of the season. But I just think it's not time to go for him now. You've got Daka, Iheanacho all challenging him for the main spot, and Daka's showing some very good form and some good stats across the season for Vardy. 32 shots inside the box. It's very impressive, and his XG, his XA, all good, 10 big chances. When Vardy plays, he can do very well, and he can still do pretty decent against City, Liverpool. He's got great records against both clubs. Then he's got Norwich, Burnley and Brighton, and I think those fixtures are looking really good, but I just don't see him playing all of these games across the Christmas period, and I think you can just find better value elsewhere, whether you go to Ronaldo or maybe downgrade to a Watkins when Villa are clear to play, and other options like Antonio and many others that I always discuss. Raul Jimenez, for example. Calvert-Lewin is also coming back into the mix now. But yeah, for me, Jamie Vardy's a sell, despite some very good stats, despite a very strong opening to the season. But I just don't like having a striker who's that expensive and who isn't even that nailed anymore. So for me, Vardy is a sell. Now, this might be another opinion that some people don't agree with, and that's fair enough, because I said that Bernardo Silva is a hold, yet İlkay Gündoğan here is also a sell. And the reason I say that is because Bernardo Silva is at least nailed, and with Gündoğan, I just don't really see him starting. Well, he might start the majority of games, but the thing is, he's not going to start as many games as Bernardo Silva, and he's going to make more appearances off the bench than the Portuguese and also other City midfielders and attackers. So for me, Gündoğan is a sell, but then again, you look at some of these fixtures like Leicester and Brentford. If he does start or get even 45 minutes, he can do very well. But in the grand scheme of things, you can move him on to Mason Mount, Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva. For me, the pick of the bunch, Diego Jota, Jarrod Bowen, Gallagher, an Arsenal midfielder, and many more. So I don't think Gündoğan is exactly worth it. I was actually really impressed by him, and I was looking to maybe even go for him over Bernardo Silva around 5 game weeks ago. But with De Bruyne back, that doesn't really spell good news for İlkay Gündoğan. He's still going to get a lot of minutes, but it's going to be more limited than it was beforehand, and his stats across the season are pretty good, arguably better than Bernardo Silva in some areas. 8 big chances is very good. It's the same as Bernardo Silva, and 3 goals, 4 assists with limited minutes, I may add, and 29 shots, 22 inside the box. He makes some fantastic runs, and he is still a good FPL asset. But I just think there are better options in the midfield, around 6 to 8 million. Rafinha's another one, so I would look to sell İlkay Gündoğan. And to conclude this video, we've got Saint-Maximin, and you may ask, well, why do you have this guy in your sell list or even featuring in this video at all? Most people don't even have him, but he's actually owned by over 12% of the game, which is quite surprising. And even I would add Callum Wilson is possibly another one I'd look to sell, but I'd obviously be a bit more inclined to keep Wilson as opposed to Saint-Maximin. And we haven't done many of these transfer tips videos recently because of everything that's been happening, but yeah, definitely Newcastle strikers and players are all sells after the kind of good run of games ended after the games against Norwich and Burnley. But you look at Saint-Maximin, some decent stats across the season, 35 shots overall, 18 inside the box. His XG and XA figures are quite similar to each other. Nothing great, to be fair. 3 big chances, 4 big chances created. He's still up there in terms of the highest scoring FPL forwards. But for me, Saint-Maximin is a sell. It's kind of as simple as that. And even Callum Wilson, as much as he's a very good player and finisher, he's also another one I'd look to sell. Any of these Newcastle players, they're in a relegation fight. Eddie Howe is a good attacking manager, but it's going to be very difficult for them to get out of this slump that they're currently in. And you look at, for example, Raul Jimenez, Calvert-Lewin coming back, Mikel Antonio, and many others around maybe even 5 to 8 million. There's Dennis, there's King, and a few others, Broja. I just don't really see any need to have Saint-Maximin or even Callum Wilson at that matter. But if it's a choice between Callum Wilson or Saint-Maximin, of course I go for Wilson. But Saint-Maximin, if you have him, and quite a lot of people do, I look to sell him. I just don't think it's worth keeping him anymore, despite some decent fixtures coming up. So that's it. That's the transfer tips video. We've talked about the players to buy, hold, and sell. Also that segment about Tsimikas at the beginning. And then we have Cristiano Ronaldo here on screen. And for me, I kind of simplify this matter. If you have him, I'd probably hold until we get any news, for example, of United's game being postponed. But other than that, I'd probably look to hold him. If you don't have Ronaldo, I'd probably rather spread the funds around instead of having a premium like him who costs so much money that you're probably not going to captain anyway, and just focus on bolstering your squad and having as many options as possible just in case of further postponements. So that's kind of a summary of Ronaldo. A lot of people have been asking about that. And if it wasn't for all this that's happening, then for me, Ronaldo is one of the best forwards to go for. But at the same time, it was never necessary or essential, and even more so now with everything that's going on. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Leave any feedback down in the comment section below, and be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and also join the Discord server. All the links are in the description below. The same goes for the league, which you're still free to join. It's still open, and good luck with Game Week 19. Good luck with the rest of the season. Hopefully most of these games, well, hopefully all of them go ahead. But as I talked about in my team selection video, Aston Villa versus Chelsea currently looks like the only game that is in serious doubt of actually going ahead or not. But we'll find out more over the next week or so. Then we have the big news, obviously, of the FA Cup, no replays, and it kind of frees up a slot in Game Week 22 for a possible double game week. So that's also very important to prepare. If you can, save your transfers so you have 2 free transfers heading into Game Week 20 and also in Game Week 22, just so we have even more information about this potential double game week, which is actually probably looking a bit locked in. And you can also strengthen your squad even further to actually attack that double game week and have a very good squad that can actually make the most of the circumstances. But thank you very much as always. Enjoy the football, and I'll see you next time.